Bluetooth because it's easier to not have to. I don't know if you can hear me well through it.
Yeah, I can hear
Okay, it's
it. Okay.
makeshift.
Okay, well, people, this is my friend Dustin, and he does all kinds of things. He's an artist. He can build anything basically. And also he used to fight. So we're just gonna go through his different fights, and it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it was a very
But that,
disorganized. Yeah, it was a disorganized time back
well,
then.
well, that's what we want to hear about. Yeah. So uh, just kind of what got you into fighting, and uh, and then just go through like chronologically the different like official or non-official fights.
Well, so it was kind of let me drop this chair a little bit so I can be a little more. There we go. It was kind of like a typical 9-year-old kid comes home from school with a black eye and says, "I think I need to join karate." And
So did you get into karate originally?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to figure this would have been back in 1986. I was a kid,
Yeah.
and karate was a big thing. There was karate schools opening all over because the Karate Kid had come out, and people were still, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris movies were still all over, and it was a kind of popular. So karate schools were doing pretty good. So it wasn't like hard to find a place to go learn. And then I said, yeah, I need to. And then plus, I just had a thing where I kind of had a little bit of a interest because watching them do the moves, how like it looked so clean and so cool, and they were fast, and the movements were pretty. Like like you watch a John Wayne movie, and he's the Duke, and he just kind of goes pop. It's the old classic
Yeah, it's so
pop,
clumsy.
right? And then
They rear back and
you watch like Bruce Lee, all of a sudden he's like, and it's like, whoa, that was cool, and the guy's head snaps back, and it's like, whoa, that was cool. And I want to learn how to do that, right? So I took up in a Hapkido school with a guy named JD, and JD was like a fifth dan in Hapkido and like a third dan in Taekwondo, and he used to fight in well, he used to be a bodyguard and a bar bouncer, so he fought
okay.
in some local tough mans and stuff like that way back in the day when they were still like advertising them on broadcast TV.
Oh wow. So you could watch like Tough Man's on TV.
At that
That'd
time
be
they had.
interesting. You just
Yeah, they didn't really air them. What they did was they put a commercial, they bought airtime, and they said, "The Tough Man is coming to Denver," because I was living in Colorado, right? And they showed clips of the last one, guys knocking the crap out of each other and all that. And then it would tell you where it was, and then you would go sign up and fight in it. But they didn't air the fight, they just aired the commercial, so you could go sign up for it or go spectate in it.
wow.
So those
Oh,
were,
so you
yeah.
were in Colorado, so that's where the first UFC happened, isn't it?
hmm
That's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah, I would have been in high school, ninth grade, when the first UFC hit, and then by the time, yeah, so, but that would have been to jump forward because you figure I was like 9 years old when I started training, and then I started learning that, and then JD moved away, so I was looking for another place to train, and I met Joe Sanchez and Richard Ford at my local high school. They were teaching a free class in the gymnasium after school. And they were both ISKA kickboxers. They were both, I don't remember, Joe was at one point rated eighth in the world in ISKA, and Rich
Oh
was,
wow.
he held the world title for a bit. And they were both bantamweights. So they were both these 135-pound Hispanic dudes that were quick and hit like a hammer, and they were both teaching our class. And so we would do traditional across the floor training, and then when we were done doing that, we would glove up and spar for the rest of the class. It was a real simple class, but it was effective because it was just like repetitive, you know. And I had already had my taekwondo and hapkido training, so I had a foundation when I walked in. They were like, "Oh, you shouldn't be a yellow belt." I was kind of trained for a few years, and JD didn't move you right through the belts. I mean, he made you really work hard to get your next belt. And they were saying, "You
Yeah.
shouldn't be a yellow belt. You should be higher than that. You've been training too long." I said, So they started getting me in it. Luckily, it was the taekwondo forms, which nowadays I'm not really into taekwondo, but at the time that was available to me, right? And I was a good kicker back in the day,
Now,
naturally.
Taekwondo is like mostly kicks, right?
A lot of kicking. And, there's a thing with Taekwondo that a lot of people don't know nowadays. The old school Taekwondo, there was a guy that taught with JD. His name was Dave Moreau. And Dave was an old school Taekwondo guy. And that guy was hard as a nail. And when he kicked and when he hit, it was very solid and it was very planted. Nowadays, you see these sport taekwondo guys and they're hopping around like some taekwondo asshole and doing this jittery shit and trying to slap each other. And the old school taekwondo guys look at
Yeah,
that and they're like, what are you doing? Like the old taekwondo guys were like more like traditional, plant your feet, get it done. They just were really good with their kicks you know. And I was a naturally good kicker back then. They were like, "Oh wow, you're a great kicker. We need to train you." But then when I started training with Rich, he started working my hands more, and so that was pretty cool. Like going from that was where I made that transition over from taekwondo to kickboxing because these guys were both professional kickboxers, so they started teaching me how to use the stuff instead of just throw the stuff. And you start to learn real quick what works and what don't.
huh.
So yeah, but that's kind of where it all started. By that time, I was 14, because I trained with JD for yeah, so it would have been 10, 11, 12, 13. So I was with JD for more than 3 years, 4 or 5 years. I trained with him, and by the time I met Joe and Rich, I was just 13, going on 14 years old, just a kid, just a gangly, energetic, skinny kid. And they were like, "Wow, you got some natural ability. We're gonna train you." I said, "Okay," and it was really fun because they didn't charge money. It wasn't about running at
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah, it was just show up at the gymnasium and we're gonna work out after school. Okay, and Joe was really good at judo too. I remember this one particular night. The wrestlers were in there borrowing the gym, and they had left the mats down because normally we didn't have mats. It was just the wood gym floor. And Joe goes, "Hey, let's do randori." And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "It's judo sparring." And I had training on how to throw and fall because of the hapkido, and JD taught me how to. He was like really good at teaching me how to break fall and all that. I said, "Okay," but I had never used throws in real time at this point. I had just trained him for a long time. And JD had moved away before he got us into that. And JD was one of these old school. As a matter of fact, he recently passed. He was 76 years old or
Oh,
something. And
wow.
so you got to figure at the time he was only 30 something. And he was one of these that would develop his students slow and steady. So anybody that JD trained had a good foundation because he was one of them old school guys that like even if you're an upper belt and we get new people in, you could do more front kicks. It ain't gonna hurt you to do more front kicks, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So all of his students were solid, like they had good solid foundation, and that made my other teachers like working with me because I already knew what to do. It was like, oh, he's already done trained in that. You don't have to like make him. So Joe, you figure he's not a big guy. He's 5'5", 135-pound guy, and he goes, grab my sleeve and grab my lapel collar and let's just walk. And you've done judo,
yeah,
roundori,
yeah.
it's fun, right? Like do you remember the first time like you got judo thrown in real time?
Yeah, I don't know that I did because, well, yeah, because my coach like he had done like a bunch of parachute dives and his knees were shot. So
Hmm.
we didn't really do judo. We like he'd tell us how to throw uh, but we didn't really do stand up. We just did the ground stuff. And
Hmm.
my strategy was just take the people down in some ugly way and then hold them down for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was like his knees were just trash.
Yeah.
But at some point, I it must have been like a tournament or something. Yeah, I got thrown, and it's just you don't even feel it. You're just like, bam, and then you're glad you worked on those break falls.
Yeah, because
Uh,
there's like no pressure, right? Like you're like there's no
yeah.
struggle. Like all of a sudden all you see is wall, ceiling, wall, floor, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Oh yeah, it's so beautiful. I remember one judo tournament. I saw like there was like an open weight thing, and this little tiny guy fought this like giant guy, and he just threw him a pun, and it was just beautiful, when you hit that perfect throw. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it.
Yeah, Joe was an old school guy that he was really good. Joe Sanchez. He was really good at karate, kickboxing, boxing, judo, and wrestling. He was a really well-rounded guy, but he was long retired before AMA MMA became a thing.
Hmm.
So he was
But he was
teaching.
already mixing it together.
He was already like so he did wrestling in school and college. He did boxing and kickboxing with ISKA. He had black belts in Kyokushinkai, Taekwondo. I don't remember. I think he only got up to I don't remember which belt in judo, but he was really good at it, you know. But he was one of those old school like Joe was hard. Like his hands were tough. He was a typical old karate guy. Like his hands felt like weathered, beat up leather. I mean, when you were
Is that
sparring.
because they're like doing that stuff, or are
Yeah,
they doing like open palm strikes, or?
he's just doing a lot of work, a lot of bag work. He did both bare knuckle
Huh.
and gloved, and he just used his hands. We used to,
Oh wow.
hit stuff and over and over and over, and they'd use the sandbags and the little rock things, and they'd boom, 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 boom.
I remember my coach, my judo coach, had like this board that had all these cuts in it, and
Yeah,
then you punch it or something, but it kind of gives a little bit.
yeah, they
I
had
don't know
what
what
they
it's
called a
called.
makiwara board, and they had rope wrapped around it, and they would just punch it little bit, just
Huh.
bounce their punches on it. That was kind of an old karate thing. The kung fu guys had those wooden dowel things, and they, you know, I
Oh
never got
wow.
that into kung fu. I trained with Art DeCoscos for a while, and that was a lot of fun, you know and he did
Huh.
Kaju Kenbo and One Hop Kwando was their style, and then so it was basically a kung fu based style Hawaiian stuff. The Hawaiian stuff's pretty fun,
Huh.
like those guys were.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate that I'm old enough to experience some of those old guys because the young people now they would never know what it's like. Like you're sparring this guy, he's a little guy. Art DeCoscos was a little guy too. So here's these little guys that had to learn how to fight bigger guys because back when they trained, the reason they trained is because they had to fight bigger guys to defend themselves.
Yeah, there's like no weight classes probably.
No, they were just getting in a fight. They just needed to survive. And Art was so good. I remember one time I went to kick him and he moved and he went poop and he punched my leg. And I was like, ow!
Yeah, that's awkward.
Like these guys could do the stuff you see in the movies. It didn't look quite the same. It didn't look quite as rehearsed, but they could do it. Like they could hit you with stuff that was like, no way. And they're like, yeah, they could do it. you know. But I
Huh.
remember when Joe threw me in judo, I was instantly hooked. I was instantly hooked because that's real time. No, you do this and I'll do that. That's okay for learning the move. You want to do that. But this was just try to throw me off my feet was all he said, and I couldn't do it. 135-pound guy, I could not move him around. He had such good base,
Yeah,
such good
yeah.
balance, and he was strong for a little guy. And the whole key was when I tried. Every time I tried to do something, I got thrown. And his timing was perfect every time.
The timing is crazy. I saw
yeah.
this one guy that would hit a foot sweep, and it's
Uh,
just timing. Like every time you move, he would just kick your feet out from under you. It was crazy.
Yeah. So that was kind of like a big point of when I was training and then of course I started kickboxing with Joe as my trainer because I had done point tournaments and back then we didn't do we weren't all geared up. We had a little pads, no headgear on some of them. They weren't starting to mandatory headgear all over quite yet. And they didn't point stuff, back then you would actually hit each other a bit. Nowadays it's kind of gotten kind of like a little tag game, we would actually hit each other a bit,
Yeah,
you know. The judge wanted to see at
yeah.
least you know,
I went and trained with some karate guys. They were like point fighters, and it's like it's crazy. Like it's all just like lunching in and getting the guy fast. But even some karate tournaments, like they do kick hard sometimes.
oh, yeah. Well, the dangerous part about point fighting, especially old school point fighting, was like back then they wanted to see that little. If you moved them a little bit, okay, that's a point. If you just grazed their shoulder, nope, no point. Like they wanted to see you make some
Huh.
contact and move them a little bit. Okay, that's a point, right? The problem is they're trying so hard. to get in as fast as they can and score that point, that the velocity's there. And I've seen guys get hurt worse in point fighting
Oh,
because whap,
oh
they hit
yeah,
fast and then they make. I mean, if you notice all the good knockouts in full contact, they weren't torquing as much as they just snapped it in real quick, and the guy didn't see it coming and whap, and he went down. It's usually a very relaxed, quick.
yeah,
And my old teacher said, start point fighting to get your pinpointing down, but then let it go when you get good at it and start kickboxing so you're not just getting in, getting out. You need to learn to stay in there and fight. So it had its place, but to us, point fighting was just part of our training. It wasn't what we made a career of. You know, it gets you on the mat, it gets you competing, it gets you over the butterflies of competition, it teaches you to apply your timing and your pinpointing, get in, but then they are also prepping you to not be like standing in the side, like waving each other in the head. And don't do that. You want to get in there and point and get out. I didn't always do great at point fighting, but it did teach me how to compete, and that's the role it had. It wasn't. I didn't make. And then I started kickboxing right after that. My first kickboxing match was an open tournament, and all the guys in my division, nobody signed up. I was the only one that signed up, and they said, well, you can either we can give you your, because you have to sign a waiver and pay a little entry fee in this tournament, right? And we can give you your entry fee back, or if you want, you can fight that guy. And his name was Brian. They called him Big B. He was a big dude. And I just watched him mop
so
up
the other
every.
guys were just like in a different weight class, or they just
Yeah,
showed up?
yeah. I was in like the 155-pound class, and he was 257 pounds, so he had over 100 pounds on me. And he was like
Oh
six
wow.
foot two or something. Like he was a big boy, and he's a big boy. And I just watched him mop up everybody in the heavyweight division. He just went in there and he just steamrolled these guys. I was like, all right, I'll fight him. So I said, you could do some rounds with him, and we can, if you want to compete, but it's up to you. I mean, that's like because it was a tournament. So if you want, you can. We were hitting each other pretty hard. We weren't trying to knock each other out, but we did knock each other out sometimes. And then so we went in and we had a really good fight, like a really good fight. I was all over. I was scared for my life. I was like, his freaking gloves coming at me looked like a freight train coming at me. I was like, get out of the way. And I was hitting him as fast as I could and running around behind him. And I kicked him in the head a couple times. And he goes, dude, like, that was really fun. Like, you were really hard to hit. I said, well, wouldn't you be if you were coming at you? It's on
Yeah.
video somewhere on an old camcorder
Oh
somewhere.
wow.
Yeah, probably buried at my folks' house somewhere. And then they said, all right, enough of that, because it started to get out of hand. And they said, right, you got to compete. Are you good? Because I went to touch gloves with him because my gear got messed up or something, and they fixed it. And I went to touch gloves. He was getting frustrated with me, and he kicked me in the solar plexus, and I went like that, and he popped me in the head, and I was like, ow! I was like, all right, I'm gonna get at him some more, and then we fought some more, and then they said, all right, that's enough, that's enough. This is getting a little too carried away. I think I was frustrating him because he couldn't hit me. But yeah, and then MMA started to take over. You know, Joe passed away. Rich quit teaching, so I went and found Mike Silva, who was really a good Mark. This guy's he was a full contact world title holder too. Really super good. Like,
Kickboxing.
yeah, kickboxing, and he was another one. He wrestled, and he did a lot of stuff, and he was just a really super good, well-rounded martial arts guy. I still keep in contact with him a little bit. So I carried, so through him and some of his guys, I kept my fight career going, and I started getting from the kickboxing matches into MMA. But then by the time the MMA was like really getting to that point, I was already starting to get a little bit older and starting to wind down. So I had we used to sign up for the Tough Man's boxing or kickboxing, and then we would get in and start doing the um, uh, MMA stuff a little bit. But it was just gaining momentum at that point.
So how does a tough man work? How many guys do you have in a tournament like that? And you just fight everyone? They just bracket you and you go at it? Is there weight classes? I
So
always
some
thought that
of
would be fun, but they're not really popular,
Yeah, there's
anymore.
some. Yeah, so the early ones, open weight. You signed up, you
Oh
fought.
wow.
You might be a lightweight fighting a heavyweight. I mean, there was a guy named Andre Walker, and Andre was a really good. He was a southpaw, predominantly a boxer. I saw him win some of them. He was really good. I liked Andre a lot. Um, there was another guy named Eugene Paycheck Pacheco, a Mexican fighter. He was a little boxer, and he would fight against kickboxers and everything else. He was really good. Eugene Pacheco. He was those were two guys that I remember. I didn't fight those two guys, but I trained with them because they were at events
Hmm.
that Keith, one of my trainers, he brought me in to run gloves and spar with the guys and get them warmed up and all that stuff. And then when it was another event, he said, "Do you want to fight in this one?" And I'd say, "Yeah," and because they need to. Because my thing was is I was a fill-in fighter a lot. You know, they'd have open slots and they just needed someone in there, and like I'll fight. You know, so I ended up fighting real big guys. I ended up fighting little guys, I mean, and at that time, it was like it was kind of disorganized, but it was like, okay, here's everybody that signed up, and what we're gonna do is I don't remember exactly how they organized it, but somehow you just ended up in a bracket, and they just kind of like drew names, I think. And then the later ones, they started to divide out weights. They started to get a little more organized with it. So you can kind of see like who you might be fighting. The early ones, you didn't know. You could be talking to the guy before the fight and he's 3 times your size. You might be fighting him later that night.
Yeah, yeah. What is your thought on that? Like, do you think that bigger guys have an advantage? Because sometimes I question it when I'm looking at those old UFC fights. A lot of times the little guy wins.
Yeah. Well, let me get a refill right here. You know me and my coffee.
You got me addicted to coffee. It's horrible. I'm like a drug addict.
Such a bad
I
influence
never
on you.
drank coffee before. What?
I'm such a bad influence on you. Here, John, weld and drink coffee.
Uh, See, if the wife's trying to step in and have an intervention. And, yeah,
It won't hurt you. Just don't load it full of sugar. You'll be fine.
I don't. I just coffee, and I like to put like a little milk.
Well, to answer your question, I think it just depends on the fighter because I fought some
Hmm.
big guys and I just carved them up. I just carved them up. But then, like Pat Smith, he was in the first UFC. I used to be a sparring partner for Pat Smith, and he
Oh
was
wow.
he was 6'1", about his trim weight was about 212. And Pat was trim at 212. So he was strong. Dude was
Huh.
strong. And he was a pro. Went to Japan, trained under Toki Hill, grappling. He had traditional black belts. He fought in Kyoktuki and he fought in Sabaki and he fought in all them, where they do full contact kicks to the head, but only punches to the body, you know.
Huh.
Have you ever seen those? Those old
N-
Sabaki challenges they did.
no, but that sounds fun.
You can knee and kick to the head, but everything if you throw hand, you can do everything to the head only with feet and knees. But if you throw hands, you have to throw them to the body.
Sounds such an interesting rule set.
Bare
Because getting
knuckle.
kicked in the head actually seems so much worse than getting punched.
Oh, I saw some guys get well, I got my bell rung with kicks to the head a few times.
Wow.
And foot
Huh.
sweeps are allowed and judo takedowns are allowed and it's traditional.
Oh, crazy.
Those dudes were bad. Those dudes were badass dudes. Like, God, they were tough. I used to spar with them. It was
Wow.
like you could kick them in the body, and it was like kicking a 2x4. Those dudes were tough, you
Huh.
know. And Pat did that. And then when UFC came, of course, he signed right up for it. So Pat was a bigger guy that I was like, oh man, you just know. You ever sparred with somebody and you just know this guy's better than me. Like he's more experienced,
Yeah.
he's bigger, he's stronger. Like all I could do is learn from this guy. That's all I can do. And then you get other big guys that you spar with, and you're like, all right, he's big, but I got him handled. Like I really think it just depends on the person.
Right. Like sometimes the endurance is a factor. So would you say that like in those tournaments, the big guy always won, or did
Mm-mm.
it? No. Yeah.
There
That's
was
what I'm
there
thinking.
there was a tough man I did where when I say I did, I worked corners that one because I had just fought the week before in an organized kickboxing match. And so I was coming down off of a fight and I said, well, I'm going to work this one. So I was working corners, running gloves, helping the fighters, warming them up, sparring with them, doing that stuff. This dude that won, and it was all they had was two classes, lightweight, heavyweight. That's it. So you had all the guys that I think it was 170 pounds and down and 175 and up, I think is what the weight division was. And this dude in the heavyweight class, I would have put him at about 5 foot, maybe 3 or 4 inches tall. Short guy. His legs were this big. He was like a tree trunk. He's a little blonde hair. I can't remember his name, but I'll never forget this guy. Little blonde haired guy. He looked like a midget in there. I mean, he was against some really big dudes. I remember he'd go in and
Hmm.
he was always looking up at him because everybody was taller than him. And his timing was so good and his punches were so powerful that he just waited for them to throw and he'd come in. It was like watching a Rocky movie, like wham, wham. I mean, and he landed them clean. So he was like folding
Oh,
dudes over the whole fight, you know. And he won. He won the first. So he won out of everybody in the heavyweight side. And John Kronk won the lightweight side. I used to train with John Kronk. If you ever look him up, he is really good in MMA. I think
hmm.
John's in his 50s now, but
The
that
name
dude
sounds
was,
familiar. Yeah.
yeah, well, he's well known around Colorado, but and he's old enough now too that like he would have been in there doing it, but before when the events got big, he was probably at that age where he wasn't fighting as much, you know. But I sparred with him. I went to his gym and stuff. That dude was amazing. Like, and the thing with Cronky is people were afraid of him because he was kind of crazy and he kind of had a reputation for being a jerk, you know. And so
Yeah, yeah.
so Pat was actually at John's gym training, and Keith says, "You want to come down and help Pat train?" I said, "Yeah, sure, we'll come down there." And I'm like, I walk in, like, I'm pretty young. I'm 18, right? 19 years old. And I realize, like, these dudes are the real deal. Like, I'm in a real atmosphere, which wasn't nothing new to me, but you just know when you walk in, these guys are the shit, right? And I remember Keith telling me on
Yeah,
the
and some guys are like just mean, you know? Some guys
well,
is it's not fun. It's like they're trying to kill you.
yeah, and I remember Keith telling me on the way to the John's gym, he said, "Stay away from Kronk." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because he's known for like lighting some dudes up and like he's a tough dude. Like he's mean and he's tough and just stay away. Just help the guys train, but stay away from Kronk." And I said, "All right." And this was for a tough man for boxing that they were training for. So we trained, we sparred, I helped his guys. I just did what I was asked to do, and I got a good sweat going. And then when we were winding down, some of his guys were there, and they were throwing some kicks on the bag, just winding. I went over and I one of John's guys, and I said, "Oh yeah, I was kicking with him, and we were just talking. Pretty nice guy. I think his name was Donovan. He had long hair. He fought in a lot of those fights." John comes over, Kronk, and he says, "Hey man, you got nice kicks. Do you want to do a few rounds with me? Just light rounds, hands and feet." And I look over at Keith. He's behind John. He's going, no, 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 like that. And I'm going, and I looked at Cronky and I thought he didn't have I didn't get a bad vibe out of him. I said, yeah, okay, let me get my stuff and then put the mouthpiece in. No headgear, just glove up, let's go. That dude, he didn't hurt me, but he completely schooled me for round after round after round. I walked out of there this much better than when I walked in there. But he really taught me. Like, this dude could hit me whenever he wanted, and I wasn't an easy guy to hit. And he was showing me things. But what John Kronk is super good at is picking out his opponent's mistakes in real time right in front of him. I saw him in that same tough man that we were training for. He dropped a dude with two left hooks. The guy went in there, swinging on him. And John stepped in and went, poop. It's a perfect, well timed, perfect technique hook. Guy went, poop, down. He was dingy. He got up. He barely shook it off. He came in. He was going at him again. Poop, did the same punch again, dropped him again. And after the fight, I walked up to him and I said, "You hit him with the same punch twice." He goes, "Yeah, he didn't want any more of that left hook, did he?"
Got some sort of alarm or something going on. Oh no. Oh no, I think it quit recording.
Uh
Oh no,
oh.
maybe it's recording.
Uh oh. Mine
I
still
don't know.
shows
It was doing
recording.
like what? It says that?
Mine still shows the red
Mine
dot
still
with the
shows the
time
red
going.
dot with the time going. Huh. That's weird. Yeah, something happened. My sound cut off and then it started doing like some countdown thing. But yeah, it's still recording. I think you're right.
Something.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, it's still going.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
But yeah, I told John,
Anyway.
I said, yeah, you got him with that left hook. He goes, yeah, he didn't want no more of that, did he? I said, how'd you do that? And he goes, when he was hitting me, I noticed every time he would throw his right hand, he'd drop it. Like he'd throw it and drop it instead of throwing it and bringing it back here. So every time I just waited for him to throw it, and I just threw my hook, and it landed clean both times. He could spot that when someone was in front of him throwing, which a lot of us have a hard time with that. All you see is stuff coming at you, and you're trying to avoid it, right? So he was super good
Well,
at
yeah,
that.
I never got there. Yeah, I could never even start thinking about like traps or, but I understand it because with jujitsu, that's the game. Like, try to trick them into a trap and then boom. So,
Yeah, and he
so
was
yeah,
great.
I never.
Yeah, it
That's
was kind of funny
that's a
because
different level.
Keith went up to him and he says, "How come you didn't like pummel the crap out of Dustin when he sparred with you?" And John said, "He came in, he was cool, he didn't have an attitude." He goes, "Keith, I only pummel the guys that come in with an attitude." And I went,
Yeah,
him and I always got along great. He was always super good to me. And all the people didn't like him because he was mean, and and he was. I mean, look him up on YouTube. Look up John Kronk highlights. He is a
okay.
shark-eyed,
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
badass fighter. Like he's scary, you know. And but he was always super good to me. He says, "No, you came in, you were cool, you wanted to learn, you weren't trying to chest around, so I wasn't going to do that to you." You know, so I had super good experiences with some of these great fighters because I just was genuinely wanting to learn. I really loved it. I loved kicking, punching, throwing. I loved sparring. I had, I mean, you see me sitting here puffing on a cigar. We used to go outside and smoke between rounds because back then fighters still smoked.
Yeah, those guys in Thailand, and their conditioning is off the charts.
Mine's not.
I don't. I wonder if it has something to do with the smoke. Like I don't think it has. I don't think the smoking. It's just what you're used to. I think
Well,
you're
if I
training all the time and you smoke. I don't.
yeah, if I train, if I go hit the bag every morning, my wind comes up even if I smoke or not. It's
Yeah,
just I think it's what your
yeah,
body's used to. I don't condone it because it's better when you don't. Because I didn't start till a little later. I didn't
yeah,
start till I was in my 20s, and I had already been training since I was a pretty young kid, so it didn't really slow me down because I was already in good shape. But I lived in a house with two heavy smokers for parents, so it was just a normal part of life. But a lot of people look at me now and
yeah.
they're like,
You're breathing anyway.
yeah, I just, and I was training hard back then. And, people look at me and I go, there's no way he was like a fighter and this and that. He's like, got his coffee and his cigarette. And he's just kind of hanging out, making pretty pictures and welding motorcycles together and fixing old machines, sewing machines. No, I spent like 20 years of my life training, fighting, and it was a
Yeah,
good experience. I don't have any desire to do it now other than play around and break a sweat once in a while. I have nothing to prove because I've been cranked upside the head. I've been had the crap knocked out of me, and
have
so
you been knocked out? Like, have you ever
um,
been like? It always scared me, like those guys you see like lay on the mat, like shaking and stuff. I'm like, shoot, has that ever? Have you ever been like knocked out bad?
not that bad. No, I was in a session with Dan Magnus one time. He was an ISKA champion. Dan, look him up, Dan the Magnum Magnus. And he threw a jump spinning back kick, but I thought he was going to throw a jump spinning hook kick, so I ducked and his heel went
Oh,
bam right between the eyes. And my eyes rolled
uh,
back in my head, and I rolled over and I got up and I kept coming at him, but I didn't know what I was doing. I must have been out. And next thing I know, I got Keith grabs me and he's got his shirt pulled up and he's doing like this on my nose because he had split my nose open. There was blood shooting out of my nose.
oh,
And Dan said, "Dude, you were out cold and you were still coming after me, dude. I just had to keep backing away because I thought I really hurt you bad." I said, "Well, you kind of did, but I didn't know. I heard the clap in my ears, that
yeah,
pop noise in your head, and you go, oh, right?" And
yeah,
so I've had that. I've had a guy, not a, well, several guys, but one time in particular I remember is I ducked and right into a roundhouse kick. I didn't go down, but it knocked me stupid. I was dingy for days after that. I was I had a pretty decent chin and I got pretty lucky. But yeah, I think I've been knocked out on my feet a couple times. So I guess to answer your question, but luckily I didn't get dingy out cold where they were having to, you know, resuscitate me in the ring or something.
yeah, yeah. That's always scary to me when you see those guys that they get hit and they're just like teetering on the ground, and oh, you're like, oh, is he gonna live? But
Yeah.
they always seem to come back. But
Well, the problem is like what you do when you're young, you pay for when you're older. Like now, I mean, I'm pushing 50 now. I'll be 48 this year, right? And I've got things like arthritis in my feet from kicking bricks and boards and people and bags. I've got like every
Oh
time I
yeah.
squat down to work on stuff, you can hear you've worked with me, you hear my knees crack crack, and I feel
The
pretty
crunch.
good. I get around, I feel pretty good, but I feel it like certain things from all those years of wearing your joints out and getting hit and getting slammed on the ground, and it it works on you after a
Oh
while.
yeah, like judo throws over and over. That's like so hard on your body.
Yeah. That's why
Oh
now if
like
I train, I take it real easy and I just practice and train just for the movement. And I still don't mind getting thrown. I still don't, I carefully pick my partners though, because I don't have a desire anymore to really get in there and stand up and like get after it and hurt each other because it kind of like those years came and went for me. I try to save it for if I ever need it in the street, right?
what? So you kind of. So what was kind of the end? What was your last fight, or when did you kind of decide that you're done?
I think my last fight, I was right around, it's in my early 30s, would have been like my last like serious. It was a kickboxing match. It was a full contact tournament. So you just, again, back then we just, drew names, signed up, full contact tournament. Um, I think, yeah, at that point I was doing pretty good, and
How
I,
many guys do you think you fought in like in a night? Because that's crazy. Like if you're winning, you fight five guys or
yeah, you could
four.
fight.
Or,
You could
that's a
three to
lot of
five would be a pretty good
damage.
night. On
Wow.
average, you might have three or four on average, but then on a pretty heavy night with a big sign up, I've seen guys do. I didn't, but I've seen guys do like seven guys in one night. Like they'd fight like seven times.
Wow.
That was a
That's
big
crazy.
big sign up, big tournament, but that was kind of not real common. Usually you'd fight three to five times on a good busy night. I think mine was maybe four in one night. That's probably the most I fought in one night. It was not as big of a tournament, so and those were good ones. They were they were full contact for knockout and stuff like that. I didn't get knocked out in any of those, luckily. I hurt a couple guys on accident. One guy tried to kick me, and it was just a dumb fluke. He fell and broke his arm, and the fight was over.
Oh, ouch.
He didn't know how to break fall.
I had a friend that blocked a kick and it snapped his forearm. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And then one guy, I hit him with a jump spinning back kick clean, and I was trying to knock him off his feet. And right when I threw it, he tried to throw a roundhouse kick, and I could feel my heel bury right into his nuts, and he didn't have a cup on.
Oh,
I dropped that poor guy. Oh, I
oh,
felt bad for him. He actually won the
oh,
fight because I felt so bad for him that I eased up on him, and he kept catching me with little hits, and I was like, man, you could tell he was in pain. Like that guy gives guy credit, man. Like he was a cool dude and everything, but we were having a great fight, and I was beating him, and he's like, dude, you were beating me. I thought I was gonna lose for sure. I said, I felt bad, dude. I could feel your nuts crunch under my foot.
oh,
it was
no.
screwy. I was like, ooh. But yeah, so I would have probably been in like my early 30s. I was still doing it, and I had to make a decision. I was starting to build motorcycles a lot. Well, I started building motorcycles a lot when I was like 19, 20. I was getting into that. And then I was freelancing around doing airbrush work at bike shops and car shops and doing stuff like that. And then my leather work started getting busy, and I was like, I got to make a decision. Do I want to take this fighting further and just go for it, or do I want to keep doing this? And it was like, well, what can I do for longer? I mean, I can always train.
Yeah,
I can always kick the bag for free. I can always stay in shape if I want, but I can't be a career fighter until I'm 80 years old. But I could stitch up leather when I'm 80 years old, right?
yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of time, right? It's a huge commitment
Well, fighting
because you don't
career,
want to
yeah.
go into it out of shape.
Fighters, I mean, it's a flash in the pan. Their career is here and gone. It's that quick. And then next thing you
Yeah.
know, I mean, how many fighters do I know that were awesome, amazing fighters in their day, and they're working regular jobs now just to get by because that's all they know. They know fighting. That's it. They're great at it. That's what they chose, and I respect them for it. But I've had, where like I enjoyed like when you come to the shop and we work on stuff because it's like John knows more than just fighting. This is cool, right? Because you have like at some point injuries and this and that, and you don't want to fight no more because you don't want to keep getting busted up. Well, let's build a trailer that stands up on its own. let's, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
variety. So that's kind of when I just sort of, I think I just naturally migrated towards my shop life, and I thought, well, I'll keep training and fighting in the whole for like if I feel like going to a gym and working out, or if I get a buddy and we want to train together or whatever for fun, great, right? But am I really going to go out and win a world title now at 31 years old? Eh, you know, maybe Chuck Liddell did it at 30. What was he, 38 when he was holding the title?
What, like, yeah, who was the George Foreman got a title when he was like 40 something, right?
40, yeah, he was like
Crazy.
45
I
years
think
old, and
50.
yeah,
Yeah, it's insane, right?
you
But
know. But the reason George Foreman had such a long career is because you remember he was inactive for a lot of years. When Muhammad Ali knocked him out, he didn't fight for a long time. He only came back later to pay the bill.
oh yeah, he came back later, but
So he had a
huh,
long rest. If he would have fought that whole window that he didn't, he would have been. I mean, look at those guys. Man, they're slurring and they can't.
right? It's just like some of those guys that they get messed up, but then other guys like I don't know, it's weird, right? The whole brain thing is weird because some guys seem to get hit the same amount and they don't it doesn't seem to affect them. And then some guys like they can't speak or it's crazy.
I think it depends, but you know, I mean, Rocky Marciano, when he retired, he was still fine, right? He was still speaking good, and who knows what would have happened to him later.
Right? You never know, right? If he wouldn't have died in that what was that like a plane crash, right?
Yeah, but as far as it goes, I mean, I was glad I did it. I remember my dad telling me, he goes, "I'm glad you retired out of fighting when you did." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because by now you'd either be in movies or you'd be half retarded." But
Right.
it was a lot of good times though. Like I remember when we were training with Joe and Rich, we were just a bunch of young bucks and we were all full of energy. And Joe and Rich, at that time, they were 30 in their mid to late 30s, so they were still young enough, but they were mature fighters. Right? And it was funny, like they would wear the headgear. They would wear the covered over headgear to spar their students so they could spar all night. And if the student got one in, it's like you weren't hurting each other. I didn't wear my headgear all the time. They didn't make you wear it, but they decided to wear it because they were going to be sparring all the students, right? And the worst thing about sparring is like we used to say, the thing that'll hurt you worse than a black belt is a white belt because a white belt don't have any control. They'll just hit you, right? Where the black belts, they have control. They know how to, they know what level they want to go on. White belts, they just go in there and try to hit you. They don't know. And so we'd get to the end of the class after sparring and we'd get clowning around. And I think it was Travis or one of Rich and Joe's students. They'd grab Rich by his headgear and start doing like this and pulling his headgear around and hitting him because they'd get frustrated because they couldn't beat him, right? Like, damn it. And then I remember Rich, when he'd knock him down, he grabbed his cup and he pulled it and went snap. Like they used to do.
Yeah, that's the worst when your head can just like shifted sideways and you can't see anything.
Yeah, we used to do stuff like that
Or
all the
like
time.
in MMA, like sometimes I'd have coaches that want you to wear the headgear, and then some guy grabs like a choke or whatever, and you can't get out because your stupid headgear, and then you feel like it's like pulled over your face, and you can't breathe. It's so bad.
I used to
I
hate
don't
wearing
do it.
it. I actually fought better
Yeah,
without
yeah,
it. You know.
yeah. You can see so much more.
Well,
It's so restricted. And like, even if they miss your head, it still hits you because it hits the headgear. And like,
did you ever feel like if you were boxing training or something, when you had your headgear on, you thought, well, no big deal if I get hit because I got padding on. But then when you take it off, you're like, okay, now I really don't want to get hit because I don't have any padding on, right? So you get a little more spry because your head's hanging out there to be hit.
right? Yeah, you're like a little more, and slipping your punches actually works because your head's not 2 miles wide.
Yeah,
Um,
this
I
big.
remember I had to wear one for a long time because my nose, it was just a disaster. And every time I would get just tapped, I would just start pouring blood. So I had like one of those headgear with a giant bar in the front to
I had one of
protect
those.
my nose. Oh, it was so bad. It was like months it felt like before it would heal because every time I get hit, then it was. they would call me like Tampon John because I just shove like tampons up my nose. My coach would get so mad at me because I'm bleeding everywhere.
That's the fun part of gym life is all the funny stuff that happens. You know,
Ah, yeah,
everybody used to laugh at Joe
yeah.
because when he'd be teaching regular karate and then when he'd time to spar, he'd put his cup on the outside of his pants. He'd just put it on real quick. He just put it
Ah,
on and then he'd put his other stuff on and he'd spar. Joe was good. It was fun watching him. You know who he reminds me of? You ever watch Sanchai, the Thai fight?
oh yeah, like leaning back and yeah, it's
You,
crazy.
you know how when he fights, he's like real playful and he's got great timing and that's how Joe was. When I watch Sanchai clips, he
Wow.
reminds me a lot of my old teacher Joe. A
Huh.
lot. Like just so smooth and playful and he'd slip one in on you so I mean, he'd get low and wait and boom, he'd get you and you're like, I saw it coming, but I couldn't do nothing about it. Joe was cool like
Those
that.
guys are so fun to watch.
Yeah, that's how Joe was. He was a lot of fun to spar with because once I got to where I could go back and forth with him and miss his punches and get him sometimes, if you could do that, and he used to tell me before I'd go into the matches, he'd say, just fight them the way you spar me. Just turn up the power. Just don't even think about it too much. Just if you go with them the way you go with me, you'll do fine. And 100% of the time, I did, and I did great. I won tournaments. I won fights. He was just really that good. Mike Silva is really that good. Richard Ford really that good. Kronk, I mean, all those guys. I was fortunate to have some really world class guys that treated me well and taught me good, and they didn't abuse me. I had a couple of times I got abused and beat the crap out of me. But you need that. Nothing will make you a better fighter quicker than a good ass whooping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you
But
feel like there was a time when like it just clicked or something? Because for me with the striking, it just never. I felt like I felt like there's never a point where I felt like I understood it. Or did you ever feel like there's a point where you get to and you're like, your eyes open up and you're like, ah, yeah, okay, I'm
yeah,
starting to
so
figure this out.
there's a big stigma out there between grapplers and strikers. You know how that always goes. And being predominantly a striker, because I came in earlier before grappling really got, more popular. So I'm predominantly a striker with a little bit of grappling, where you're more of a grappler with some striking, right? So like we're both kind of opposite. I don't believe that. I do believe this, and this is coming from a guy who's predominantly a striker. And to answer your question, yeah, there's a point where you do it and do it. And if you have good teachers that slowly break you into it, because at first, when you first start out striking, and especially when you're young, you're kind of afraid to get hit, so you stay way back. You know how people like you see street fights on YouTube and stuff, they like really get away from each other. They don't want to get hit. There's a point where you
Yeah,
slowly get in closer and closer, and then when you get more seasoned at striking, you can just be right there and just barely make a miss and just keep hitting them. That takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of getting hit. It takes a lot of learning when to hit. It's a lot. You have to nitpick it for a long time to get super good at it. And yes, there's a point where the light comes on. Oh, I can counter, or I can see what they're gonna do. And if you're fortunate enough to have good trainers that don't just send you in there, and I mean, some guys they just go in feet first blindfolded and they just get hit and they just get over their fear of getting hit and they just hit back. And if they have what it takes, they just do well. It works. It does work. But if you have somebody who slowly builds you up to where you can slip good and good timing and good technique, see a lot of fighters, they're just wrenching their punches, trying to beat on each other. So you got to learn how to relax. You got to know when to breathe. You got to know when to move. You got to know when to unload, when to not, when to cover up, when to get out of there. Unlearn how to get away and relearn how to slip to the side. Because if you just get away all the time, you can never reach them. So you have to learn when to move in at different angles so you can hit them and reach them. Right? There's a lot goes into it, and I'll say this: with grappling, you're already mixed up. You have to get good at grappling. You only have to get it right one time. You lock up. If you're a good grappler, you take them down. You can choke them out. You can submit them. It's easier to get past that with grappling because you're either locked up or you're not. With striking, there's inside fighters like Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson. They're inside. They're pounding on each other. The outside fighters like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, they're out here, bam, bam, bam. So you got different levels of strike. and different guys with different reaches, different guys that are different speeds, got different guys with different guys and gals, different levels of power. Um, so there's variables to striking where with grappling, it's like if you just train good in grappling and you know, because like jujitsu, think about it. There's like four moves in jujitsu that if you can hit them at four or five different angles, you're going to be pretty hard to beat up on the ground, right? You don't need to learn all of
Yeah,
jujitsu to be great at it. You can learn a few different, and then if you throw some basic Western wrestling in there, you don't want to be on the ground with that guy. He'll tie you up like that. But with striking,
yeah,
you have to like you can build your accuracy with striking for the rest of your life and still have more to do. You know, I mean, even as I got older and slower, I was sparring with younger guys, and I wasn't as fast as I used to be, but I was able to hit them easier because my timing was, you know. And you got to have
yeah,
good timing with jujitsu and wrestling too. But it's easier to feel your way through it because you're already locked up. The more you do it, the more you get a feel for how
yeah.
people
You can
move.
feel you're getting like feedback. You can feel when they move and like boom. Yeah, it's so different. Yeah.
And I'm a big believer people should learn how to grapple. They really should because the first time I got on the floor with someone, Cruz Saltero, I started training grappling with him a little bit. I wasn't with him very long because we were both kind of Cruz and I had the same first instructor. JD was both of our teachers. You know,
Oh,
but Cruz is about 8 or 9 years older than me, so he was a great fighter. He fought in Ring of Fire, he fought in Vale Tudo, he fought in like all these MMA. He was great. And his brother Fino too. Me and Fino had a lot of some good sparring sessions down the basement, beating the crap out of each other all night. And but I remember when I got on the floor with Cruz, it was like I didn't know what to. I just didn't know what to do. I was a stand-up fighter for years. I knew some, and that's the thing. Like you could learn Hapkido, learn how to throw someone, judo, put them over your hip, and put them on the get out of there. But once you're on the ground and you've got somebody on you, you got to know what to do. So I was glad that I got some training in it, and I was able to use it to some degree, and at least get familiarized with it. So if I ever need to worry about it on the street or something, you got something to work with. You know, we're a lot. You look at the early
yeah.
UFCs; these guys are on the ground. They were taking their heel and just kicking each other in the butt and trying to pound each other from the side. Where now they're mixing it up.
Yeah.
They're getting in and out of moves, and they know how to get out of it.
Yeah. So
So
much of it is just seeing something. Like if you've never seen a move, it's like gonna catch you by surprise. So just having the knowledge that something exists is so beneficial.
I always tell people this, and this is coming from a guy who's got a couple black belts, you know, this and that. Because traditional does work. The old school traditional karate does work if it's trained right in the right circumstance. I will be the first to tell you, most traditional martial arts don't work that good. They just don't. You know, if you go out and learn karate, just say regular old school karate, right? What are you going to use from that that actually works? A straight punch, maybe a straight kick, front side kick, you know, something like that. More than likely a lower one because you don't want to be giving up half your real estate to somebody if you're trying to fight them, unless your name is Bill Superfoot Wallace and that's just what you do, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, I mean, you look at Bill Wallace, he was Tang Sudo. That was his karate style that he did, right? He used five techniques his whole career. He used a hook kick, a roundhouse kick, a side kick with his lead leg, his left leg, and with punches, he used a hook and a reverse punch. That's the five techniques he lived on his whole career, undefeated, because he was super good at those five techniques. He knew when to hit him. He knew when to retreat. He knew he was, and plus the guy was like a walking nail in his day. He trained hard. You know, you've met him. He's not a very big, right? But nobody could touch this dude in his prime. Five techniques, but he just knew how to use them super, super well. Now, now you got MMA, you got judo, you got boxing, you got Muay Thai, you've got jiu-jitsu, you've got all these different things going in there, and people lean on their favorites. The reason is because whatever you're cut out to do that you can do super well is going to be for you. Otherwise, you're just a fighter with a lot of I know that if I strengthen my grappling game, I'm just a fighter with a lot of with a strengthened weakness, right? When Kathy Long, my friend Kat, she was amazing. Like she even now in her years of her life now, she's still quick. I've done a couple seminars with her. She's amazing to train. Her last MMA fight. they were really focusing on the grappling aspect of it. And her and I were talking, and I said, you know, I saw that fight online. I watched it. If you would have just went in there and fought her with your kickboxing the way you always did, that fight wouldn't have lasted because she just couldn't. The girl just couldn't
Right.
stand with you. She just couldn't do it. She would have never got in. She would have never nothing. She won the fight. Kat won the fight, but it was kind of a struggle. I said, why didn't you just go in there and
So many
kickbox her
people
ass?
get sucked into the new thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, because the trainers were, and it's good. I mean, I just admit it. It's good to focus on that because it is a thing and it is a very real thing. But, you know, all of it has its place. That's people don't seem to realize it's not necessarily how good of a system you practice, it's how good you practice your system. Now, that system might not be as good against this other system or something like that. But I keep coming back to the thing with fighting and martial arts that there's just too many variables out there to say this is better than that. You know, some people are extremely great. You know, I mean, look at all the people. Dennis Alexio, he was an amazing kickboxer. He didn't have that many techniques he threw. He had great boxing skill, lots of power, and he had a few good kicks that he slipped in really good. He was just really good at a few techniques, and it was really hard to get past those techniques with. So, you know, Ronda Rousey and her, you know, Pete, she proved that you could take
Just a
traditional.
throw in the armbar.
Yeah, I mean, she proved, regardless of what people might say about her, she proved that you could take a traditional martial art like judo and actually do something with it. Maybe her boxing wasn't good enough, that Holly got past her and all that. Okay, fine. You know what that is? That's the fight game. That happens. If that doesn't happen to you sooner or later, you haven't been a real fighter.
Yeah.
Real
Yeah,
fighters
you
get
didn't
their
fight
ass
the
kicked.
right people.
Yeah, they get their ass kicked sooner or later. We all have, right? You've been choked out. I've been knocked out. We've been hit, hurt, banged up. I mean, we've all been there because if you ain't fighting,
Yeah, like I kind of resent the guys that quit on top because I feel like that's not the way to go. Like the only way to go out of fighting is to be beat up and dragged out, you know? Like, you have to lose. That's like you owe it to the next guy. And like like you haven't fought the right people if you haven't lost. Yeah, I kind of I don't like the guys that have never lost. I'm like, you should have fought more people. Yeah, yeah. I feel like it.
I fought guys that I had better technique than them. I had more experience than them. I was faster. I was more powerful, right? But they just happened to win because that's just how it happened. It's just how it happened. I
It's just a bad. Yeah.
I just had a bad day, you know. I just wasn't on top of it, or they were extremely on top of it. Maybe their adrenaline was going more
Or
than
like
mine because they
their
knew I was a
skills
better
just
fighter than
happen to be
them.
your kryptonite.
Yeah, you know, and then
Yeah.
we'd mix it up in the gym the next day, and I'd dominate them. It was like, well, what happened during that fight that I didn't, you know? It's because, again, there's just variables, and if something like that doesn't happen, I mean, that's how we learn, right?
Yeah, I fought this guy from Serbia, and he had like some cool, like some weird jokes uh, from I forget what it's called. It's like a little different than jujitsu, but yeah, the first day that we fought, he was destroying me. Like, but then once I figured out his tricks, it was like I was easily beating him. You know. So yeah, so much of it's just like do they know that thing that you don't know, and then once you see it, you're like, oh, okay, I know it now. Now it doesn't hurt me.
Yeah. I remember this point fighter kid came in one time, him and his dad, and we were training kickboxing. That particular night, we said, okay, we're gonna do point sparring for the first half of the class, and then we'll do kickboxing the second half, right? And this kid was a taekwondo dude, and he'd do the whole thing, and he'd come in and he'd hit you, and then he'd go, you know, he'd raise his hand like, okay, I got my score, or if you got him, he'd go, yep, yep, you got me. But they were so used to hitting once and getting out, right?
Hmm.
And I remember I was sparring with him, and he would come in and boom, boom, and he'd throw some explosive technique, and I'd either slip out of the way or just absorb it because I was more of a kickboxer, right? And when they switched us over from point sparring to kickboxing, this kid, I just let him do a goofy thing like they do when they dance like this and they try to hit you. And I'd let him come in and hit me, and I just absorb it. I just go like into the Philly shell and just absorb his kick, and then after he was done, he was so used to just backing off. I just came in and bam, 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 and he all he could do was he didn't know what to do because he didn't know how to fight continue. So I was like, okay, you could
Uh,
score a point on me. It didn't hurt me. I'm a full contact fighter. I'm used to getting hit. So you hit me, big, you know. Well, that is a big deal in a point tournament. That's a point. But in a kickboxing match, who cares? I'll let you hit me one time. I'll let you hit me one time just so I can hit you three because I see my opening when you do it.
yeah,
You know.
yeah,
So yeah, it's if you go back and you watch like the old footage of Jerry Trimble, he was a badass. That guy, I met him. He's a super cool dude. Watch Kathy
huh,
Long's old fights. Watch Dennis Alexio. Those guys back then, and the girls, they were very, very seasoned. Very seasoned. When MMA came in, there was a little bit of a thing there because now they're training more things. So it was hard to get super good at one thing because you have to train a lot of things. You know, some very talented people like McGregor and these guys that just natural talents, they got very, very good at both, but it is more to think about. The guys I used to find that were really hard to beat up, if he was a good boxer or wrestler, he was hard to beat up. The only thing you could beat him up with was like Thai fighting. You'd kick him in the legs and he wasn't used to. But on average, a guy that's a good boxer or wrestler, he knows how to hit you and not get hit. If you do hit him, he's used to getting hit. And if you tie him up, he knows how to wrestle. That's a hard guy to beat up. And it's not like a very complicated system. Boxing and wrestling, a person could learn those two things and get proficient at both of them in a year or two's time of good training and be something to be reckoned with on the street or in the gym. Like that guy could hold his own pretty good against a lot of people if he or she is trained well and has enough uh, real time done with it. Real time is important. You've got to spar. You've got to spar. If you don't spar, you're just never going to be able to apply nothing. You got to spar in judo. You got to spar in boxing, kickboxing. You got to grapple. You got to roll. If you spend a lot of time doing that, you're going to be able to use your stuff. You know, that's what I believe. It's you can practice all day and all night, but until somebody's really coming at you in real time and you learn how to slap it on at the right time, it's always going to be useless. And that's why boxing is so effective and wrestling so effective because they box and they wrestle and they get good at it. You know. Did you go into freeze frame? You went into freeze frame.
yeah. I was breaking up a little bit,
Oh
but
yeah.
I was, I was
I
like,
just went.
well, it's recording on his end. I just act like I'm hearing. You know what he's saying?
Yeah, I saw you there for a minute. You were like you were frozen like that, like he's really intently listening. Yeah, so but
So,
that's kind of what, you know,
oh no, go ahead.
no, that was kind of my, you know, I mean, I could go into all these stories and details, but that was kind of my experience with it. It was like 9-year-old kid, traditional, and then move into kickboxing. Later, you start learning Thai fighting. Then you start learning how to grapple. Next thing you know, you know, I was pretty lucky that I got to start traditional point fighting, American kickboxing, and then Thai fighting, and then MMA. I got to taste all of it. That was kind of neat, you know. Uh, I got to see the evolution, you know, and be in the middle of it and
Yeah,
meet a lot of
yeah,
cool.
yeah. You're in that time where it's like just like everything starting, and it's kind of and every like the Gracies get all this credit and whatever, but there's so many people that are experimenting with putting everything together at the same time
Yeah, I mean the
from like different perspectives.
Gracies are super great. I mean, they just brought what they did was they brought something new that most people hadn't seen yet. Now most people have figured
Yeah,
it out by now, but they became it was right time, right place for them is really what it was. You know, and what they
yeah,
brought was valuable, super valuable. So, you know, I love MMA because it exposed so many fake martial arts. You know, there are traditional martial artists that are very good. They are very effective. You know, they are like some of these guys were like, wow, you know, really amazing. But there's also a lot of them that are just like, really, you know, it's that would never work in the octagon ever. You know.
right. But some of it gets discounted, and I think it could work. It's just if you applied the same amount of time that people apply to wrestling and these other things to those techniques, they probably would work because they're unique and they catch people off guard. And so much of it is just uh, exposing someone to, like having a technique that no one's seen before, and so they just get beat the first time. You
Well, it's like I've told people, I said, like you and I were like playing around, right? I said, well, grab me, let me see something. We're playing a little bit. And you're strong. Like you've been shearing alpacas and doing farm work and then training, and you're strong. You are strong.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if my karate techniques work on Gunther, they'll work on any. If I want to know if something works or not, I just try to do it on, and I know right away. Nope, that one's bullshit. Throw that one.
Yeah.
If I can get a position on you or something with like, okay, that one is probably valid, right? Experimenting, you got to do that. You got to like, I mean, maybe that one would work on some tomato can who doesn't know what they're doing or it's not very strong, but you're exceptionally strong.
Oh,
Strength does play a role. I mean, might is right. I mean, the most fierce fighter in the world couldn't stand a chance against a gorilla. It's because the gorilla's just stronger.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. The gorilla is just crazy strong, right?
I mean, it
But
doesn't
still,
matter.
part of me is like, maybe with the right technique.
Maybe. I mean, I've seen, remember that 300 and whatever pound sumo wrestler did that tug of war against that 180-pound ring.
Oh yeah, I saw something like that. Yeah,
It was on a man versus.
they're
She
so
played with
strong,
him.
right? But
She
also,
toyed
I'm
with
like,
him.
well, what if you like, what if a gorilla is coming towards you and you spinning back kick it or something to keep your distance? Or what if you just chop its legs out? I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's some. I saw like a video of this guy getting attacked by a bear, and he like steps to the side and like throws it off the edge of a cliff. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, so there is some hope.
Well, that was
There is a
Masoyama's thing, right?
possibility.
That was Masoyama's
What?
thing,
What?
right? You know,
Oh yeah,
Masoyama,
just
the founder of Kyokushin Kai Karate, he knocked bulls out with his fist. He used to fight
oh
bulls.
really?
Yeah. No,
Yeah. I mean, you see these athletic guys that like the bull charges at them, they do a backflip or something over top of it. So like we are way smarter than these things. I feel like it would be possible. You just got to pick the right technique the first time. Because if you mess up, it's over.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how. I wasn't there, but there is footage of him when he was young. He would grab the bull and he would chop its horn off its head, and he used to hit him in the head and knock him out.
Crazy,
They said he did it with 52
crazy,
bulls
crazy.
and killed three of them. So, I mean, and there is footage, but I don't know. Like Joe, so Joe, my teacher Joe, he had an instructor named Hito from Japan, and Hito was Masoyama's student. So Joe was well, that the third generation down from Masoyama, right? And even
Wow,
Joe
yeah.
would say, he'd say, but I don't know, there's tricks to everything.
Right? Like this magic. But I mean, you hit anyone in the right spot at the right time and they're
Mhm.
out, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
And you could generate a lot of force with a kick. Like I imagine you could knock a grill out if you're like, if you hit them right.
The hardest part about fighting, I think, the hardest part about it is relaxing and generating force at the right time. It's hard to do when someone's coming at you to hurt you. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of getting hit. It takes a lot with striking anyway. And then it's just as hard too with
Yeah,
grappling because once you're on the ground and you're in a struggle, it's hard to see what's going on when you got some dude's armpit in your face and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Next thing you know, you're twisted up and you don't know how to get out of it and you're going, uh-oh, right?
yeah,
That's probably the
yeah,
single hardest part about learning how to fight is learning how to deal with someone that's coming at you in real time. Everything's happening so fast, and learn how to keep your cool, spot it, and use it. And that honestly, it just takes a lot of practice and a lot of winning and losing. That's just all. It's that simple. You see these people that train, and they're very good. And they have great technique. They're fast, but they've never fought. They don't do so well. And
and just like that calm in crazy circumstances is so helpful in life because you know some you're so relaxed like even in like a crazy. I remember I used to work on the squad and like everyone else is freaking out, but it's just having that experience is so helpful for everything because you're just more relaxed,
hmm
and that's a better way to be in bad circumstances.
Well, I've had like women come to me and say, "Can I learn women's self-defense from you?" And I go, "Yeah, but if you really want to learn self-defense, The first thing I tell people these okay, if I walk into a self-defense seminar and the instructor says, I'm going to teach you 300 ways to hurt somebody, blah, 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 I just turn around and walk because
Yeah.
you're not going to remember all that. I'll tell, I can show you how to do it, or you can join up, go to a local boxing, get a trainer,
And then you have to get the experience. Yeah.
and he's going to teach you, the first thing he's going to teach you, or I'm going to teach you, he or she or myself, is a 1-2. You're going to do that 1-2 punch combo over and over. You're going to learn jab, 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 jab until you're sick of throwing jabs. And you're going to learn this one until you're sick of doing that. And then you're going to put them together. And if you look at every beginner boxer, most of what they have is just a 1-2 punch thrown at the right time, right? If you could learn that combination by itself and get super good at it, and then get in the ring and spar with it and get good, you will at least an opportunity ability to defend yourself because you'll have something to work with that you don't have to think that much about. We went on
Yeah.
freeze
Just
again.
focus on one thing and then have that experience doing it so you're good at it. And so you remember to do it. It's got to be instinctive. Otherwise, you won't do it.
Yeah, the best teachers will teach you just like one technique over and over.
And then they'll have no students because everyone gets bored. But really, that you gotta be okay with like boredom. You have to just spend the time to get good,
When you get bored of it is when you know you're getting,
right? Yeah.
the good teachers will. There was a story I saw. A guy, he went to kung fu class. Says, Sifu, what am I going to learn today? And he says, straight punch. And it was the kung fu style where they use like this part of the straight punch, straight punch. That's how they do in kung fu. They do like this kind of punch. And he had him doing this
Huh.
straight punch over and over. And he says, what am I going to learn today? Straight punch over. And he had him spar with an advanced student after like months of doing this straight. And he was amazed that when the guy came in, he just instinctively went pop and caught because it was just there. He forgot here and remembered here, and that's the. You shouldn't be thinking about it. It should just your body should just do it without. And the only way to get that way is repetition. Simple techniques done repetitively, lots and lots of times. You can learn a few good techniques, and if you get in a situation, you just bam, you just do it without thinking about it. That's the most effective way to learn how to fight. Boxing teaches. We're in connecting.
Yeah, yeah, it's breaking up again. Uh, well, this was fun. We should probably wrap it up. Anything you want to say before we end? Tell the kids not to train.
No, I mean, I will say this. If you love it, the kids do it, enjoy it. Don't get yourself all busted up because it does come and go. You do have different phases of your life you're going to go through, and you want to save some of your body to do those things. I still have your UFC gloves you gave me because you were actually in my workshop when you decided, yeah, I think they're going to get hung on my inspirational.
Oh, nice.
You know, I've been saving these little trinkets and I've been remodeling here. Like you can see my
Oh,
sun,
cool.
sunshine room. When you were here before, this room behind me, we took out the little diner room. We completely took those two walls out and opened this whole space up back here. See how it's all open behind?
Oh, yeah, you were saying, yeah.
So I got more room for the machines and just trying to make more elbow room so it's easy to work in here. But I think young people train and enjoy it, train it. And if you're good, talented, and you want to fight, because a young person's going to do what a young person's going to, by all means, don't not do it.
Yeah.
But just remember, life has new chapters.
Yeah, and even the guys that hang until they're like 50, they still got to move on eventually, unfortunately.
Roberto Duran was fighting all the way into his mid 50s. That dude, that's all he ever. Dude never even really learned how to read. I mean, that's all he knew. But he's so good
Wow,
at it. But now he says, I
crazy.
won't get in a fight now. I call security. I don't want to fight nobody ever.
Uh,
you know, yeah, you're in freeze frame mode over there. Your Wi-Fi signal must be running out
yeah, I
of.
think my internet's breaking up, but let's when I stop this,
Uh-huh.
just wait and make sure it says like uploaded or something because uh yeah, because I think if it doesn't upload then we lose it all. And then I cry and wait.
Okay, then we'll just have to get on here and do this again. And it was fun, but
We just
I
have to do
won't
it
do it
again.
under those circumstances unless we have to. I do it because it's. But yeah, I'll just leave this screen pulled up so it can upload.
We'll see.
Okay.